Так, цей куб має підійти. Треба рухатися далі. Це має спрацювати.
And what if it didn't kill him? With all due respect, your best guess is still just a guess. We need to have faith in the possibility of good. Wait, hold on. His oxygen consumption's going up. I think he's alive. He's conscious. Hey, go steady down there. You've been out for a couple weeks. 15 days, in fact. They thought you were dead. If it wasn't for your life suit, you probably would be. Listen, there's been a complication. We can't link into your POV camera, and it looks like communications are only working one way. You can hear me, I hope, but I can't hear you. That means we don't know how badly you were affected by the transportation. If you're feeling confused or disoriented, you should know that deep space travel can do you pretty serious psychological damage, especially to your memory. Even a few hours out there in the dark can cause permanent problems. I'm gonna be honest with you. Mission control are concerned you might have no idea who you are or why you're in there. If that's true, I have some difficult facts for you. You're a long way from Earth. A very long way. But every single person on the planet is depending on you. That thing you're inside right now, whatever it is gonna hit Earth in the next few hours. And if it does, that's the end of everything. You need to decipher and dismantle it from the inside before that happens. I just hope you haven't forgotten how. We all do. Now listen carefully. This is important. The reason why it's me talking to you and not mission control is because you're too far out into deep space. Their signal can't reach you out there, but mine can. I'm Commander Novak. I'm an astronaut on board the International Space Station. I'm gonna relay everything they tell me, but the bad news is, every time I orbit around the far side of the Earth, I'll move out of radio range. When that happens, you're gonna be on your own for a while. Just stay calm and keep your head straight until I get back into range. Okay, this is it. I'm orbiting out of range now. I'll be back soon. Just remember what I've told you, and believe it.
Reasons for doing a remaster. Doing a remaster was definitely not something we would have considered doing years ago. Why would we remake an old game versus making a new game? Turns out there were multiple reasons to motivate us to do this. First of all, preserving the history of Q.U.B.E was important to us. This became apparent when our console publisher decided to discontinue selling the game, which meant the game would no longer be available for sale on consoles, as well as the original Q.U.B.E no longer being available for sale on Steam, and we have many fans of that version. This really motivated us to create a definitive version of Q.U.B.E that would be up to date and available on modern hardware, and would be future-proofed. This version would include Q.U.B.E, Q.U.B.E Director's Cut, other Easter eggs, this commentary, and a whole new sector of puzzles, bringing at least 4 hours of new content to the table. Another reason is that these ideas came up 18 months before the 10-year anniversary was coming up, and so we thought this would be a good time to release a remaster. We absolutely cannot believe it's been a decade since Q.U.B.E came out. A lot has happened in that time. How the project started. Q.U.B.E began life in 2009 as a student project at Newport University in South Wales, UK. We were originally going to use the Source engine, but decided to move to UDK, which is a free version of Unreal Engine 3, as it was being taught in our class, and given none of us were coders at the time, it offered a visual scripting solution, so we were able to make the game without traditional programming knowledge. Whilst the game was purely going to be for our individual portfolios to go and get jobs in the games industry, it turned out we were actually sitting on what would become a commercial indie game. Thanks to encouragement from peers and lecturers, we put the game up on ModDB and it had 10,000 downloads within a couple of weeks. Immediately, we felt like we were onto something. Soon after this, we met with the co-founder of Epic Games, Mark Rain, who thought the concept was great. We then secured funding from Indie Fund, composed of fellow puzzle game designer Jonathan Blow and other indie veterans, and were able to begin work on the game full-time. The game came out on Steam in January 2012, and we were able to pay back the funding within 4 days. This was a huge success for us, given it was our first game straight out of university. What improvements did we make? We really listened to the community and wanted to fix stuff that was broken before, or remove stuff that just wasn't fun. There were a bunch of basic things you'd expect from a game that weren't in there, such as subtitles in other languages and an FOV slider. Why have a classic mode and director's cut mode? We wanted fans of the original to enjoy the original experience intact and enhanced. The chilled music with no voiceover or storyline to follow, just puzzle after puzzle. We felt it made sense to include the director's cut too, for fans of that version to enjoy an enhanced experience.
It was crazy, isn't it? Like, you know, how we went from over the summer we were meant to come up with an idea, and I can't remember, I think our idea was like some crap, like Roman thing, I can't remember, like some 3D platformer. But do you remember?
I think we were really struggling, and then we had to do a presentation to say what our idea was, and then we didn't really have anything, but then John said, I found this animation, this could work, so we basically just played the animation and said, this is what we're going to make.
Well, yeah, because I remember we felt our thing was that other people were presenting. And we were like, oh crap, no, our thing is crap compared to this. And then luckily we had the lunch break, whatever it was, and then we were like, right, let's just show this animation. Huddled around.
Yeah.
And people said they didn't really get what the game was or something. Like
we didn't really understand what it was going to be either.
Yeah.
At that point. We just thought, look, we love the aesthetic of this animation, so we're going to make a game using a similar aesthetic. So, making the world out of cubes.
I think maybe it wasn't a case that people didn't really get it. I think everyone just had a different idea about what it should be, because it's quite an open concept. Then we managed to refine it over time as well.
Yeah.
But I do think a lot of people, like in our class, actually played a part in helping us design it, because we had a lot of presentations. We had a lot of feedback in the early stages, which was useful.
It's very true.
Yeah, it kind of evolved quite a lot, because that animation was very action focused.
Yeah.
And it organically kind of went to a puzzle direction, first person, and I remember we had that brainstorm meeting, and we started thinking, what if we had coloured cubes that did different things?
Yeah, I think part of that was just the logistics of making everything interactable. It kind of made sense to focus on a few different types, and then as we did that, it kind of naturally drifted towards a puzzle game. The remaster was built from scratch using the Unreal Engine 4. This meant we had the opportunity to rethink and redesign areas of the original game which were problematic. Given that when creating the original game, we had no industry experience and we did not have a programmer on the team, most of the issues we faced were due to technical limitations. Revisiting the game 10 years later, and with the increased functionality of the Unreal Engine 4, we found that most of these issues were no longer relevant. We also had a huge amount of feedback from reviews, Let's Play videos, and the Steam forums, so we had a better understanding of which areas of the game needed improvement and what needed to be cut altogether. We wanted to stay true to the original, so for the most part we used the same mechanics. What we found was that in the process of recreating everything, we were able to make everything behave much more reliably. So given that we were no longer restricted by the same technical limitations, we were able to expand on a lot of these ideas and design new content. That is why many stages of the game remain almost identical, but there are other stages that have been removed and others that have been redesigned due to feedback that we received post-release.
Name is 919.
Hi, I'm Rob Yescombe, the writer and narrative director and narrative producer for Q.U.B.E Director's Cut. I met the team when they were demoing at a student showcase and I was working as creative director at Crytek UK. And I remember sitting in the audience with the then editor of Edge magazine, and both of us, our eyes bulged out of our heads when the guys rolled out with Q.U.B.E, because at the time, the artwork was still pretty basic, but the underlying design and the intelligence of what they were showing made me sit up pretty quick. And I knew that these were guys who were going to be, in my opinion, were going to be stars. And I remember talking to them after the show and saying how impressed I was, and they said that they wanted to use the demo as their resume, as their CV to get jobs. And I remember telling them, guys, I think this game is going to be your job, and here we are 10 years later doing the remaster. The original game was a big hit, especially for such a small team, but in the reviews, a fairly high proportion of reviewers said that they wished there was more of a story. Not everybody, but it was enough to make the team consider that as an idea. So when they eventually decided to port over to console, I was extremely flattered that they remembered me and that they wanted me to write it. But there was a problem. They wanted a story, but at the time they couldn't afford to change the game. So the challenge was, how do you write a story for a game that's already finished? How do you write a story for a game that's already finished and has to feel like it was always meant to be there? More on that problem later.
Yeah, that's how it began, and then of course all the different milestones within submitting the thing, and it was just going to be a portfolio piece, and we all got an A for whatever the highest grade for that piece of work, which is higher than anything I've got before.
Oh yeah, same for me.
And then it kind of was like, oh, we're not stopping there, we're going to continue, and we got interest from Bithell and lecturers, and then Mark Rain, and learning more about the business side of things, and then Indie Fund.
It was actually Mike Reddy first, wasn't it? That
yes,
kind of pushed us and motivated us to go even further with this.
That's true.
Yeah, he was the one who suggested Indie Fund, wasn't he?
That's right, yeah.
So it was just really, really fortunate timing that as we finished uni, Indie Fund started, so it was just absolutely perfect timing.
It's crazy. It is crazy if you think about the odds of that happening, right?
Yeah, and also that when we started the project was the exact same time that UDK got announced. Because before that it was just the Unreal 3, which is very similar, but it's just not as user-friendly, and it was more of a modding tool. But for them to actually release the engine just as we started the project was really useful as well.
Yeah, with indie-friendly business terms as well, which was new as well at the time.
Yeah. I mean, they're not good terms by today's standards. There was like 25% of revenue, which is insane, but I think back then it was seen as fairly good.
Yeah, so all of that, combined, got us off the ground, which is phenomenal, and so that was a crazy journey, and it all happened so quick as well,
Yeah, I remember thinking at the time, like, it felt like quite a long process. I mean, if you're talking about from when we started to actually when it got released, it was probably like just over 2 years. Full production was like 15 months or so, which felt like a long time, but then you think how long games take to make now. That was really quick.
Yeah.
It was really fast, yeah.
Yeah, we were thinking 6 months originally, weren't we? Yeah. June 2010, I think.
We were very naive and underscoped what we needed to do massively, I think, on that.
But to be honest, I thought it'd take us 6 months to do the remaster, and it's taken a similar time, so I think it's just a common mistake everyone makes.
So, fingers crossed this is getting to you. I've been speaking with Mission Control. They're worried about you. Because your radio's out, we don't know if you've lost your memory or not. If you have, it could be bad for the mission. One of the methods they use to bring back memories for amnesiac patients is to talk to them about important events in their lives. So, before you left, you wrote yourself a letter, just in case. It's a letter to you about you. Mission Control gave me a transcript. We think it's for the best that I read some of it to you. Okay, well, first, you're married. You have no children. You live in Colorado Springs, but you got married in Iceland. That's nice. Damn. I'm orbiting out of range. I'll read more if you're still there.
The reason we included collectibles is that it can give each level a decent amount of additional challenge and replay value. They are intended as mini puzzles rather than hidden objects, so their location should be fairly obvious when you walk into a level, but how to reach them is less clear. Another reason to include collectibles is that it allows for more skill-based gameplay. People often say that a good puzzle game is one where once you know the solution, it can be easily implemented. And this is something I kept in mind when designing the puzzles. However, through experimentation I found there was a range of other ways you can interact with the game's mechanics, which often led to challenges which were satisfying to complete. These challenges wouldn't be suitable for the critical path, as it may have led to players getting stuck. However, these challenges were ideal for collectibles given that all collectibles are optional. Having said that, not all collectibles require skill, and when it came to choosing where to place each collectible, I would usually design a puzzle with the primary objective in mind, then I would play around with each level in game and see if there were any other areas of the map which could be reached. And if it was satisfying to reach each area, that would be a good location for a collectible.
I've never had the opportunity, before or since, to write a game that's already been released and already been reviewed. Now, a common criticism in the reviews of the original version was the similarity to Portal, Valve's game. It's a first-person puzzle game in a fairly blank test chamber type environment, so it was perhaps a fair comparison. But at the time, I think that critique maybe hurt the team's feelings a little bit. But in fact, it presented a completely unique opportunity for narrative in the director's cut, which was that we knew what people were expecting from a story. They were expecting Portal. And Portal famously has a voice in your ear of whom you are increasingly suspicious, and the curtain's pulled back towards the end to reveal that she's evil and she wants you dead. It's iconic. So we knew right from the off that players of the director's cut were anticipating being lied to. They had been conditioned by Portal, a game that all of our players had most likely played. They'd been conditioned not to trust a voice in their ear. And in fact, games at the time were full of that kind of betrayal. The minute someone was friendly to you, you knew they weren't really your friend. Players had been taught to expect the worst. So it made sense to me that that was what the game should be about. The importance of having faith in the possibility of a good outcome. In fact, that's the very first line you hear when you wake up. We need to have faith in the possibility of good. And my ambition was to re-educate players, even just a tiny little bit, to re-educate them to be less cynical, to be a little bit more optimistic. I felt that we could offer a positive message here, that there is real hope, and that the people who seem to be trying to help you in life maybe actually are trying to help you. Now, that subversion of the expectation of betrayal is a twist that is only possible because the game was written after it was reviewed. It's a completely unique circumstance that could only happen in games.
how was it doing a remaster compared to making a new game? We actually thought it would be relatively straightforward given we're mostly recreating a game that's already out there, rather than designing something from scratch. Famous last words in game dev though, eh? We thought it would take 6 months, but it's actually taken 15 months. Even though we had all the modern assets ready to roll from Q.U.B.E 2 and the design from Q.U.B.E 1, there was still a lot of restructuring to do. We had to expand the team to be able to tackle the amount of level design and art passes that were required to truly enhance the game, rather than copy and paste the original game.
Mission Control think that if you have lost your memory, me just giving you little details about yourself won't be enough to spark anything. They want me to read something more specific, something very personal to you. So, I want you to know, I'm only reading this because you wrote it to yourself. It was 3 p.m. on a Sunday. You were upstairs at home. A teenage boy broke into your house. He thought you were away on vacation. You went downstairs with your gun. You shot him in your living room. Only he wasn't trying to rob you. He was passing by and saw a fire in your kitchen. He broke in to try and put it out. He was young and stupid, and probably should have thought of a better solution. But you assumed the worst. You assumed the very worst, and you shot him. He was paralyzed from the neck down. He died 7 years later, alone, at night, in Penrose St. Francis Hospital. I'm orbiting out. I hope that helped you. Fingers crossed.
The message of the game is to have faith, to not assume the worst. Novak doesn't know if you can hear her, but she decides to have faith and tries anyway. And in this monologue, the story about the teenager being shot and you shooting them is an allegory for the whole story of the game. That taking a cynical view of life can only end badly. We need to have faith in the possibility of good.